Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris Taylor, and I am the advocate of the devil. It should be fairly obvious to regular viewers that I love video games, and movies, hands down one of my favorite pastimes. But one thing that I love doing that I've only really mentioned in passing is reading. As a writer, I have a distinct love of books, for a lot of the same reasons as movies, since in both, I'm an outside observer, seeing a different world through a character's eyes, my imagination filling in the blanks of all the little details that are left unsaid, or in a novel's case, perhaps, unwritten. In an effort to streamline the experience, filmmakers for decades have tried to capture that same magic of crafting a world based on a book, but it's a wholly different league. Details often get left out of the finished product, and readers everywhere will scoff and say, doesn't matter what gets filmed, the book will always be better. But here's the thing. It may not be every time, but sometimes the movie is actually better than the book. First of all, despite being longer and at times more thorough, books don't always focus on things that I personally love. Case in point, Jurassic Park. Steven Spielberg used the visual medium of film to bring these massive, majestic, and oftentimes terrifying creatures to life. Through a balanced mix of practical effects and technological advancements, the dinosaurs themselves looked practically real. The parts of the book that I was most disappointed with were, surprisingly enough, not the dinosaurs themselves. It was the humans. They were dicks.
People suck, sir.
John Hammond was a career con man looking to make huge profits. In the movie, he's eventually shown the error of his ways and decides that Jurassic Park is actually a huge mistake.
Mr. Hammond, after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. So have I.
In the book, though, no lesson learned, eager to continue his work, and eventually gets eaten by the compies. Also, at least before the sequel book got released, it looked like Ian Malcolm got left for dead as the island got bombed to prevent the dinos from escaping. There was an entire plot line about the velociraptors breeding that simply went nowhere. If they were going to bomb the island anyways, there was no need to do a tally on how many there actually was. Extra details for detail's sake. We'll get back to that point soon. The point is, from my perspective, I didn't care who made it out alive at the end of the novel. If anyone. The idea of the dinosaurs actually winning, destroying the park, and eating everyone in sight? That would have been a ballsy move.
Wipe them out. All of them.
The movie managed to make the characters actually have an arc, a reason for doing the things that they were doing, and added a likability to them that was sorely lacking in the novel. John Hammond was less abrasive. Ian Malcolm had his know-it-all character toned down a bit.
Boy, no, I hate being right all the time.
Alan Grant actually has a character arc. The movie also managed to do the unthinkable. Bring dinosaurs to life. We believed everything that was being shown on screen, from the beauty of the brachiosaurs to the intelligence of the velociraptors. While a book can give a lot of details and descriptions, in my opinion, it doesn't compare to actually seeing those creatures for the first time, and that's why the movie still holds up to this very day. The second point I'd like to make is ease of reading. The beauty of any art form is the ability to take established norms, the rules we're all used to, and playing around with them. Requiem for a Dream by Hubert Selby Jr. in a lot of ways does exactly that. In almost a form of stream of consciousness writing, Selby forgoes the usual grammar and structure constraints and writes for pages and pages. Considering it's a novel about drug addiction, this lack of cohesion actually does fit for the characters within it. However, it does make it quite the struggle to actually read. If more than two characters are talking in a scene, it gets intensely difficult to follow with who is actually saying what. You lose track of whose voice is being used, and while the plot still moves along, the characters can, at times, come across as being the same. Imagine, if you will, listening to a drunk person in a bar. They ramble on, mumble incoherently, lose track of what they're talking about, completely change the subject, and then just kind of pass out. Reading Requiem was a lot like that. At least at a bar, I would have been drinking with the guy and maybe even keep up. Nah, chances are I'd be the guy doing the rambling.
God damn it! Will you shut the hell up? Nobody gives a rat's ass!
I was somewhat lucky in this respect. I watched the movie first. I saw each character's arc and picked up on their speech patterns and mannerisms, so that when I did pick up the novel, I was able to follow it more easily. The movie version of this made things a lot more clear. If I had tried to read the book first, I may have given up halfway in a struggle to even understand what was going on.
No, never give up, never surrender.
The movie is easier to consume for the general public. Well, kind of. Requiem is still arguably the most brutal spotlight on the darkness within humans that I have personally ever seen. And you know what? That's okay. Eliminating certain things so that more eyes can see your work can, at times, be a positive thing. As is the case with my final point. This is J.R.R. Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring, the first novel in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. One of, if not the, first ever fantasy novel of its kind. Magic, spells, elves, dwarves, good versus evil, and a quest to save the entire planet. Now, because it's one of the first of this type, there was no basis for comparison. But books have been written for a millennia, and in creating something new, you have to take elements that have always existed. For example, paper, and ink, and a metric ton of detail that the average person doesn't need.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
A lot of people classify this as a fantasy or a quest storyline, but in reality, it was written as a world novel. A book describing every detail of every tree that was cut down to make a simple table with 13 splinters and a wobbly leg and a house that you never visit again.
That's a meaty mouthful.
Detail is good, but too much detail just makes the read a slog. In the time it would take a normal person to read just the first book, that very same person could sit down and watch the extended versions of all 3 Lord of the Rings movies. 12 hours, a complete half of a day, non-stop. The movies cut down on all the unnecessary details and streamlined the entire experience, focusing on the parts of the book that were quite revolutionary for its time, the fantasy and magical elements. And while some decreed that some of the details that were left out were needed to tell the complete story of the characters,
even the fucking trees walked in those movies.
I truly believe that what we had was perfect for what it was. Then again, not all movie translations are good. Peter Jackson decided to take a stab at the Hobbit book as well and turned that into a trilogy when one movie probably would have sufficed. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, I do hope I managed to shed some light into why movies are, at least some of the time, better than the books. Whether it be in bringing an unseen creature to the big screen, or even making a hard-to-read novel easier to understand to the general public, the visual medium of film allows us to see things, rather than try to imagine something that we've never seen before. We all, you the viewer, me the person in front of the camera, we all have a finite amount of time to enjoy things, and movies can take what could be a massive undertaking and shortens it to the point where we don't feel like we're wasting what little time we have. As always, feel free to let us know in the comments below what you think. Was there a movie based on a book that you enjoyed more than the book itself? Maybe you think I'm just too lazy to read. By all means, bring up your points against my own, so that I may proceed to prove you wrong.
Kaboom! You've been lawyered.
But for now, in the case of movie adaptations of books, the defense rests.
There's only one return, okay? And it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi.
You know what? Every time I see that scene, I agree with it more and more.